1984 to 1990, I traveled between the United States and Nicaragua, working as a photographer and citizen diplomat. In my photographs, I tried to communicate what I understood about Nicaragua and the revolution.
I'm making a picture of the cathedral.
1995. Construction is completed on Managua's new Metropolitan Cathedral. It's on 42 acres of land between two earthquake faults. The cathedral's bell tower is 36 meters high. 8 bells from Managua's old cathedral hang, silent, in the tower. Across town is the shell of the old cathedral. Steel gates close each of its entrances. The cathedral was destroyed in the earthquake of 1972. It's a monument on a fault line. A map of the city of Managua shows green and orange areas, some with street grid lines running through them. The orange areas indicate populated zones. Green areas are vacant or open land. Green areas with grid lines indicate previously populated areas. The old streets still exist there, grown with weeds. Remnants of buildings still stand. The epicenter of Managua's 1972 earthquake was in the heart of the city. After the quake, the city grew away from and around the designated quake zones. People still give their address according to old landmarks. They say, it's from where the cinema was, 2 blocks toward the lake, 1 block down. The new cathedral sits between 2 of Managua's main faults. There are small faults and sub-faults in the area of the new cathedral itself. Some geologists say these faults add up to one big fault, but the theory is controversial. One thing geologists do agree on is that Managua is very fractured, probably the most fractured city in the world. According to a Swedish Royal Institute of Technology report, Managua is the worst place in the world to build a building. 1992. Construction begins on Managua's new Cathedral. It is funded by Tom Monahan, owner of Domino's Pizza, a supporter of the Contra war against Nicaragua. Monahan announced construction plans in February 1990 when elections ended the Sandinista Revolution. The old cathedral was built in the 1930s. It was destroyed in the earthquake of 1972. The earthquake was the beginning of the end of the Somoza dictatorship, overthrown by the Sandinista Revolution in 1979. For years after the earthquake, the clock in the bell tower read 28 minutes after midnight. The clock was stopped by the earthquake. The cathedral is a meeting place for young men. They have sex in the basement. Homosexuality is outlawed in Nicaragua in 1992. The new cathedral will have the tallest bell tower in Central America. A crane will be rented to put the bells in the tower. Men line up outside the gates of the construction site every morning, hoping that a worker from the day before won't show up. Unemployment in Nicaragua is over 50%. Between the 2 cathedrals was the revolution. Its most significant aspects can't be photographed. They exist not so much in time and space as within the people who made the revolution, within the people who move through these spaces, and who must incorporate them, and what has passed between them, into daily life. June 2nd, 1990. An article in Nicaragua's conservative newspaper describes a meeting between His Reverend Eminence Cardinal Obando y Bravo and the mayor of Managua. The 2 men set a date for the first stone of the cathedral to be laid. La Prensa says, the future cathedral will be located on 42 acres of land, surrounded by the street north of the Plaza del Sol, by the Pista de la Resistencia, and by the Carretera a Masaya. Funds for the church construction are provided by the parishioners of Managua and by the North American Tom Monahan, owner of a chain of pizzerias, who will give his personal contribution for the realization of the work. The cost of the work has been estimated at $3 million. The plans have been designed by a famous architect recommended by Mr. Monahan. The design will look nothing like the destroyed Cathedral of Old Managua, because its design could be said to be ultra-modern, the face of the 21st century, with simple, pure, yet functional geometric lines. His Eminence appeared very pleased and explained that the parishioners of Managua, who are very religious, have been asking for this cathedral since the earthquake. Tom Monahan once said, "Being poor is one of the most exciting things." He advocates a family of 4 living on an annual food budget of $300, suggesting they eat farm grains and cattle feed. When he was 4 years old, Tom Monahan's mother put him into an orphanage. As a teenager, he was kicked out of seminary and placed in a detention home. In 1960, he bought his first pizza shop. He says the rosary every day. He timed it. It takes 11 seconds to say the Hail Mary, 13 seconds to say the Our Father. He is Apple at Domino's headquarters, so daily mass could be said there. Domino's is a privately held company, of which he owns 97%. No one knows exactly what the company is worth. Guesses range from $250 million to $1 billion. Monahan said he hoped the new cathedral would read the signs of the times, listen to the true needs of the Nicaraguan people, and attend to symbols that address their reality. By February 1993, the cathedral had already cost over $4 million. May 1984. My mother tells me, when you go to Nicaragua, go to the Catholic Church. You learn so much about a country from its churches, or maybe it's the people you meet there. It was the first trip I was to make to Nicaragua. I went to a De Cara al Pueblo meeting held in a neighborhood church. The meetings were a showcase Sandinista. Government leaders met with people in nationally televised weekly town meetings. One of the people I met in that church was a woman who stood up and challenged the government leaders. 3 families were living in her home. Construction on their new government houses was taking too much time. The photograph I took of that woman has been used symbolically. The image of a humble woman, microphone in hand, speaking her mind publicly. A symbol that the revolution gave voice to simple people, the revolution to women. Yet, I don't really know what she was talking about. My Spanish wasn't good, and translation was sporadic. What was the tone of what she was saying? What precise words did she use to describe herself and her home and the people who lived there? And who were the people in her house? Relatives? New tenants? The first time I went to Nicaragua, the old cathedral was boarded up to keep people from living inside with no running water or electricity. I snuck in. Remembering the advice she'd given, I wondered what Mom would think of this church. I found it beautiful. Ironic. Later, Mom and I visited the cathedral together. "Why have they let this place stand in ruins?" she said. "This is no way to treat the house of the Lord." But Managua's Catholic cardinal had left it that way. After the earthquake, he moved to a more comfortable church, high on the hills outside the dusty city. The 1st century AD. People and animals fleeing a volcanic eruption leave their footprints in the mud near Lake Solotlan. The lake will later be called Lake Managua. The petrified footprints will be known as the footprints of Acahualinca. Acahualinca is an ancient Nahuatl word that means in the trembling of the underbrush. The empty glue bags on the floor of the cathedral scared me. The brown caked ooze, like pus. Boys sniffed the glue, cupping the bag close over their nose, inhaled deeply. Once in the marketplace, the first time I'd seen anything like this in Nicaragua, April 1990, after the elections. 4 boys in a doorway. Glue bags littered the ground around them. They stared. Drooped heads, glaring eyes, sneered lips, stoned. These boys looked lost to the world forever. Seeing them made me feel the end of the revolution. I felt the trembling of the underbrush. The bells in Managua's new cathedral do not ring. The clock that drives them does not keep time. Cathedral will most likely be the last Catholic cathedral built in the 20th century. I don't think you always know when you live on a fault, but Nicaraguans have inspired me to try to know, and to draw a line between false understandings and genuine ones.